Now we're on. Wait, you're not on yet. You have to start, and let me send the link so everybody will know that you're in the air. Okay. Copy.
Can you send the link for what?
I'm gonna send the link to everyone in Taiwan.
That's a very. Okay, yeah, if you're on let's see. Oh, he's doing it right now. He's writing to me.
Who's doing what? You send it to your DJ. Send it.
Yeah, I did. I can see you too. How about that? Okay, so the rabbi is going to do a blessing for your grandfather. What's his name again? Yehuda Simcha Ben Shmuel. So he's going to do that. Maybe you want to go to sleep. I don't know. But let me tell you something real quick. We're doing a talk tonight about Rabbi Akiva. I had some things to add to this. So I want to give everybody a little bit of a pre-speech speech. Because the rabbi gets a little technical sometimes. So I want to do it kind of... Correct. That's right. Correct. Okay. So we're working on it, okay? We're working on it yet. Okay, so anyway, talk about Rabbi Akiva. So here's the thing about Rabbi Akiva. He was a very, very, very famous rabbi, and one of the reasons mostly is because when he was 40 years old, he entered the yeshiva. Now, he was very poor. How poor was he? We're talking seriously poor. But he got married to a woman of means. And when he got married to her, she was of means, and she encouraged him to go to yeshiva. And so there was a very strong force from the woman's side, also a very strong force from a spiritual side to enter yeshiva. So he was one of the greatest sages we have, and he had 26,000 followers. Now, he had 26,000, very hard, maybe 18 hours a day. And I mean, I'm fond of saying he didn't know a Shema from a matzah ball from a maftir. He didn't know anything. But after so many years, he became a sage. So as a sage, he had 26,000 followers. Now those followers, they started having infighting. They started disagreeing with each other, infighting. And from there, we don't know exactly how, but a big virus came through and wiped out, decimated everybody. He was not decimated. Five people did survive. And of those sages that survived, they went on to becoming sages that we speak about today. So 5 did survive, 26,000 perished, but luckily those 5 really brought forward some really great information from the Torah. And one more thing about Rabbi Akiva. He was murdered by the Romans back when. Now, when they murder someone, they don't just take a gun to your head and blow your brains out. What they do is they peel your skin back. Much like, the rabbi's going to talk about that in a minute, about how you peel your skin back. But they were, ooh, look at this. Ooh, look at this. You're not getting these either. You're not getting any of these. I'm getting it all for me. Oh, just came out of the microwave oven. Okay. So he's buried in what they call the diaspora. The diaspora is not like going to Los Angeles. The diaspora is being at the Kinneret. He's buried at the Kinneret. His wife is also buried at the Kinneret. His wife was also elevated. That's one of the things the Rebbe always talks about, is elevating people. She was also elevated, and she's buried. Now, if you want to go see her, go see Akiva. He's in a cave. It's a very great place to go. Make sure you speak a little Hebrew so you can do a psalm or something when you get there. Don't just stand there. You got to go there and try to at least say a few prayers, and also donate a little bit of money to the guy at the door. But he's buried there in the diaspora, which is actually Israel because it was the diaspora then. But his wife is also there too. And that's about it. I'm going to release now to the rabbi who explained to you about how Rabbi Akiva perished. It's not a very pretty sight. Okay, so the rabbi is going to do a prayer for you and for your grandfather. Not for you, but for your grandfather. You're fine. For your grandfather, okay? And that's it. I'm going to sit down now. All right? I can't see you. Can you see me? Okay. No, you need a guy who's here.
Okay. Way to go. Way to go, Richard.
We got a person who's here.
Yehuda Simcha Ben Shmuel. Yep.
He was here for 6 weeks.
Okay, so this one is for Yedidia and his grandfather. We'll say we'll have a study, not just say a prayer. We'll have a study in the memory of.
He's awake right now in Israel. What time is it in Israel right now? It's about 1 o'clock in the morning.
No, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, no, 2:30, 2:20 in the afternoon. Okay. Okay, there we are. So the road to self-refinement. Oh, let me send this to someone who asked me. My friend in Pingdong.
Who made these?
did this guy go? Aaron, where's Aaron? Here we go. Paste. Okay. So today we'll start to, we'll try to focus on the self-refinement we have during the time of the counting of the Haomer. We count the Haomer these 49 days between Passover and Shavuot, and it turns out that during that process we don't only count the Haomer, but we also have some sort of a self-refinement process that everyone is busy with. So this time, this guy was davening in the synagogue, was praying, and after the prayer, you know how everybody stands quietly, everybody besides Richard, of course, stands quietly and praying, and this fellow was taking time to pray. You know, he extended his prayer, and after he finished praying, he takes 3 steps back. And then the rabbi approached him and said, "Oh, how have you been? Long time no see. How's everyone?" And he's, I was here all along, and I said good morning when I saw you earlier, and it wasn't too long ago. It was just 10 minutes ago. And the rabbi said, I was looking at you during your prayer, and you gave an impression that you.
Your prayer's been answered.
Oh my goodness.
You remembered.
That.
You told me there's cake.
At least pretend like you came for the class, Jay.
I'm not
Richard.
I wrote a text. I said, "You call the cakes and give her soon."
So he says, "You saw me." He said, "You saw me 10 minutes ago." What's this? So the rabbi said, "I looked at you when you prayed. You were traveling to South America. You were selling stuff, buying stuff. He was completely out of it. It was journey all over the place. It wasn't like he said. So now you're back. I say." I congratulate you for coming back. How have you been? Long time no see. It's a joke, obviously. They told him that. Anyway, people usually say, "I finished the prayer and I go out to work." Torah says that what it really work is what we do with our lives. It's not just the livelihood and the way we put food, we put bread on our tables. But work in Hebrew is called avodah. Avodah is more the service of God. And here comes a very serious question, yet very simple, that a person asks himself every now and then. This period between Passover and Shavuot, where everybody takes some more attention dedicated to self-refinement, to thinking, we know the story, everybody celebrated on Passover, we were a bunch of slaves, we were redeemed from Egypt, and within 49 days, there's this big change that happens, that from nations of slave, we become God's chosen nation, we receive the Torah, God gives us all these promises, and we're heading towards Israel. Granted, something went wrong along the way, we end up 40 years in the desert, because we're not really good at directions, it turns out. It was quite a simple journey. We didn't have Waze, no, although Israel had it, but it was before Google bought it. But when counting the Haomer, it's a mitzvah we count. I don't know if you noticed on Friday night, we do that also when we have a minyan. In the evenings, we count the Haomer, we count the days. Normally speaking, when you count, you usually count forward and not backwards. But we'll see soon, what is this counting so different and what is the meaning of it? And this is what Sefirat explains. You didn't have a cake yet. You want to have one?
Maybe one more.
We're working on it. It's in the process of getting together.
I would say another unusual way is that we can not just by days, we can by weeks.
Right. We're going to discuss that. Why days and weeks? Each one has a meaning, a different meaning, and when combined together, they form synergy to express something further. So here's what Sefirat says. As the Israelites were redeemed from Egypt in order to receive the Torah, we were commanded to count the days from Passover until the giving of the Torah, to show it to ourselves. No, you had one already. Please.
Hey!
Oh, you made it eventually. Okay. Josh, Richard wanted your cake. I didn't let him.
Well, I was going to ask, this is rice and vegetables. Can I eat it?
Yes, you can.
What the heck?
Dessert.
Yeah.
I thought if you bring stuff for yourself, you bring it for the whole class.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Well, everybody can have one piece of rice.
You're being very generous. You know?
yeah.
I would have given half a piece if I could. So the Israelites were redeemed from Egypt in order to receive the Torah. We were commanded to count the days from Passover to the giving of the Torah, to show in ourselves the great passion, just like a servant counting the days when he will be free. But this requires explanation. Why do we count backwards the days that have passed and not forward the days remaining towards Matan Torah? When we count the Omer, we basically count every day the days that have passed. Usually, awaiting something, anticipating something, you count the days that are left, not the days that have passed. You're saying, oh, in 3 weeks is my big trip. In 2 weeks, in 5 days, in 2 days, everywhere, it always decreases the number. 2 weeks to 1 week to 3 days. That's when you're excited towards something. Somebody's getting married. In 1 week, my best friend is getting married. In 3 days, the wedding. What's wrong with you? You haven't got a ticket yet. You always talk like that. But when counting the Omer, it seems like we're counting towards receiving the Torah. But instead of counting towards something, we count from something. That's the first question we have. Another question, I don't know if you noticed in the Siddur, when we count the Omer, there's a special prayer that's recited afterwards. And we're going to try and get a little Kabbalistic today with the diagram of the 10 Sefirot. I know you're excited. I know you like those things, don't worry. We'll get a little bit into the Kabbalah of things. But this prayer is recited after counting the Omer. Every day there's a special Sefirah. It's called Sefirah. It's attributes of God. And every day we refine one attribute. And all of a sudden everybody becomes a maven in Kabbalah. Everybody says that. We don't really know what we're saying. But what is the reason for that? And here's a little introduction. With the mitzvah of counting the 49 days, known as Sefirat Haomer, the Torah invites us on a journey into the human psyche, into the soul. There are 7 basic emotions that make up the spectrum of human experience. At the root of all forms of enslavement is a distortion of these emotions. Each of the 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuot is dedicated to examining and refining one of them. The 7 emotional attributes are, we have chesed. Chesed is loving kindness. Gvuah is justice or discipline. Tiferet, harmony, compassion. Netzach is endurance. Hod, humility. Yesod, bonding, also foundation. And Malchut is sovereignty and leadership. We're going to get into each one of them a little later into the class and see what they really mean. But just as an introduction, so it's not just counting days. Absolutely, I could send you later the PowerPoint if you want to. So you'll have.
So the whole class?
Yeah, I could send you a chocolate cake as well.
Yeah. Of all these,
If I'm already sending.
only Chesed is in the Tikkun. Not Tikkun, in the Siddur.
No, all of them are.
That's in it, really?
All of them.
All of it.
All of them are there.
Oh.
Yep. We say every day, like Ruben said, days and weeks. Every day, a week. So basically, it goes by weeks. Each week, you refine one attribute, and then each day of the week is also 7. 7 out of 7. You do chesed shebechesed, kindness within kindness, discipline within kindness, glory within kindness, and we'll get to, we'll elaborate a bit about it. Anyway, this is just a little introduction. One thing we know about Torah is that there's always a second chance. You didn't do bar mitzvah when you were 13, you're 55, you could still do it.
53,
You didn't circumcise, I don't want to elaborate, but you could do it. It's a little painful. Don't try it at home. Don't try it at home, okay? You could do it, even at a later age. There's never a lost case, right? But on Sefirat Haomer, we say something interesting. If you miss out one day on the counting, you can no longer do a blessing. You can do the counting, but the counting is not complete anymore. And that's interesting, because usually in Judaism, there's always a way to return. There's always repentance. You miss one day, you sleep, you forget to pray, you forget to count, story's over. What's the reason? Okay, Rabbi Chaim Vitalo, this is a little bit, here is an introduction. I'll get a little more elaborate on this one. Is the Keter, Chokhmah, Binah. The first ones are the cognitive, the intellectual part. This is Keter, crown, Binah, Chokhmah, Dat, wisdom, knowledge, understanding. And from there starts, after the first 4, basically it's first 3 and 1 on top of them, starts the 7, which is Chesed, Gvuah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut, the right side, and then the left side, and then the middle side. Well, anyway, so Rabbi Chaim Vitalik says when you count the Omer, think this. Come on, what think this? You don't even know what that means. What does everybody speak about the Kabbalah of Sefirat Haomer without even knowing what it is? So why does the Torah ask us to do that? And of course, the question we said, counting as a whole, we count the Omer. It's a one big thing. We don't know why. Turns out in Judaism, there's always where to go. Tosfot says, if a person missed the count of one day, he cannot continue counting with the blessing of the mitzvah is no longer whole. How could that be? That's what Tosfot asked. Rabbeinu Nisim asked a different question. The end of Tractate Psachim. Why don't we say the blessing of Shechianu? Everything that is significant, every mitzvah we commit for the first time in the year, we say a blessing Shechianu, which means who would grant us life and sustain us. We say that blessing either when you light the candles or when we do Kiddush. On counting the Omer, we don't say Shechianu. Okay.
Maybe it's a wrong guess. Maybe it's implied by the Shechechianu of Passover.
You're close, not of Passover, but actually at the end of a process. What?
The first night of Passover, of Hanukkah, we do Shechianu.
The first night of Hanukkah. On Purim we do Shechianu. On Passover we do. On Shavuot, all the holidays. On Simchat Torah we do Shechianu. Right? Everything starts. The first thing you do, the first time you do a Shechianu. Apparently this blessing is not recited. Well, there's a reason for that. It's not just a question. Obviously, the questions we ask are always for the answers. We try not to leave questions unanswered. So obviously there's a deep meaning to this whole thing. And let's look a little bit about the not so happy. Until now we talk about self-refinement, understanding the spheres. But what really happened during the days of Sefirat Haomer? In fact, Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000 students in the days of Sefirat Haomer.
I said 26, sorry about that.
Oh, you said 26?
Yeah.
Out. That's it.
Okay, can we redeem now? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And
You have to return all the chocolate cakes you had.
What do you mean you lost? Yeah, explain that. You lost.
They died. 24,000 students during 33 days until Lag BaOmer. Yeah, during this time
also.
What? During this time. This is time of mourning. You're not supposed to marry at this time. There's a happy occasion. You try to postpone it, not to have too much rejoicing. Apparently, it seems like a regular day today, but this period in Judaism is considered very sad. And how and why? It's a good question, Emery. We'll get to that. The Talmud explains to us. First of all, a little background about Rabbi Akiva. Richard was giving us a little bit about the background. Rabbi Akiva married someone named Rachel. He was a shepherd. He was illiterate. He was ignorant. And he married someone named Rachel. I also married someone named Rachel. I wasn't as ignorant. But wait, the end of the story is much better than my story. I ended up in Taiwan. He ended up, being in yeshiva, doing all those good things that he does. So Rabbi Akiva married this Rachel. She was the daughter of a wealthy man. Why don't you like that? A daughter of a wealthy is an understatement, my friend. I say wealthy, not Richard wealthy. I mean real wealth.
We're talking serious wealth.
Serious wealth, right. So, of course, her father's name was Kalba Sabua. In Aramaic, it means a dog that is satiated, a satiated dog. What does it mean? A person will walk into his house like a dog, hungry as a dog, and will come out satiated, will come out all satisfied, eat as much as I want. Like a Chabad house. He was basically,
Why else would we come here?
I said at least pretend. You're not good in pretending, are you? It's a good quality. It's a good quality to have.
I blame you for making the food too good. It's
Okay.
your fault.
Oh, thank you. I roll it back to my wife.
We have 40,000 pounds of chicken.
So, yes, coming up. So he wanted the father, the rich guy, wanted to marry his daughter to marry, some famous guy, right? But she didn't want to marry anyone. She saw this shepherd and she said, "I want to marry him. I think this guy's just for me." The father got so upset he kicked her out of the house. No money for the wedding, no gifts, no nothing. Kicked her out of the house. They lived in a simple hut. They didn't have resources. And Rabbi Akiva, it says one time, they didn't have what to sleep on. They slept on straw. They didn't have those beautiful mattresses like you have in where you live, or they slept on straw. And one time Rabbi Akiva saw straw in his wife's hair, and he thought to himself, "What have I done to her? She came from this wealthy house, and now she has straw." And he took out the straw from her hair, and he promised her, "One day I'll buy you a gold piece of jewelry instead of this straw." Anyway, the story goes on that Rachel saw something in Akiva that no one saw. She saw the potential. And she told him, "I think you could be a great scholar." And he said, "I don't know if I told you that. I don't really know how to read or write. I'm not, And she said, "You have to start studying." Rabbi Akiva went to study. He was 40 years old. 40, okay? 40 years old. And he went to study with 6-year-old, to study how to read and write. He went to the cheder. He went to study. And clearly enough, his wife recognized the potential no one else recognized, and she was absolutely right. he started studying day and night. Initially, nothing got into it. For 40 years, you don't do anything, and in the age of 40, you start studying. And then Rabbi Akiva went, according to the Talmud, it's a beautiful story. We can have 2 hours only on Rabbi Akiva. But just to close that story, Rabbi Akiva felt like nothing was penetrating, nothing was going in. He felt like it's a waste of time. He's about to come back to his wife and say, forget it, you saw something that it's not there. But as he was walking, he saw water dripping he saw a stone with a hole. And he said, who pierced the hole in the stone so beautifully? And he looks up and he sees water dripping from the leaves. There's rain, whatever. Water were dripping. And the water were dripping constantly on the same point at the stone. So much so that it actually drilled a hole in the stone. And he thought, if water could pierce through the stone, then consistency is what really matters. If I'll continue studying, not give up, not go into despair, at the end of the day, it's going to penetrate, it's going to work. Guess what? It did work. Rabbi Akiva got to a level that no other scholar in the world ever got to. Rabbi Akiva was a magnet for scholars. Everybody wanted to study with him. He was an enormous genius. He opened the Torah, and just by pointing at the little dots above the letters, those little crowns, little crowns, he could learn why each crown is in its place and explain it. Not only understand it in his own intellect, he was also very elaborative. He also explained all that, and obviously everybody wanted to study with him. So he had, hundreds of, the initial hundreds and thousands, 24,000 students. But, and here comes the but, during a time, 33 days, there was this great disease. Let's look at the Talmud. I think there's a name of this disease. And they all died. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students in an area of land. Watch it, the Gemara says pairs. Always studying together. You don't study by yourself. If you study by yourself, nobody's going to ask you tough questions. If you want to study something, get a partner. If you want to read something, if you want to understand something, make sure you're not doing it on your own. When you're on your own, you could sometimes give up to yourself. Okay, I think I got it. If you have to explain it to someone else, there's no way you get it unless you can do it unless you got it. Anyway, pairs of students, 12,000, obviously 24, in an area of land that stretched from Gevat to, what is it? Antipatris, what is it? In Judea. And they all died in one period of time because they did not treat each other with respect. With regard to 12,000 Akiva students, the Gemara adds, it was taught that all of them died in the period from Passover to Shavuot. Rav Chama bar Abba said, and some say it was Rabbi Chaya bar Avin, they all died in a bad death. The Gemara inquires, what is it that's called a bad death? And Ahmad said, what is it, diphtheria?
Diphtheria.
Yeah, it's still a disease. I think today they get a vaccine. Babies get vaccines for it.
Diphtheria. It's horrible. It ruins all your inner organs, your kidneys, and
yeah.
Get paralysis.
Usually,
you cough like crazy.
Don't say you. Don't say you, Richard.
Not you.
No, wait. Just a second. Richard, when describing something negative, try not to use the word you. You could say it attacks someone. They become. They. You know what I mean? Yeah, they could suffer. It's just mind the tongue.
Can you roll the tape back?
I'll try. Yeah.
But if he was their teacher and they were such great scholars, how come they didn't respect each other?
Absolutely.
It's also very contagious.
It is contagious, and okay, I'll get you the background. Okay, let's go follow the class's order and see. You're right. Your question is obviously astonishing. How could they not notice they're not treating each other very well? Moreover, Rabbi Akiva was the one who founded the rule, "Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha," you should love your fellow like yourself. Rabbi Akiva was their rabbi. He's the one who taught them, and he was all for loving fellow as loving oneself. People think as oneself, this is a bit too much. Maybe not as oneself, but try it. But Rabbi Akiva asked it from his students. He demanded it. He taught it. How could they not get it? How could they disrespect each other? Now, there's several reasons several ways to understand the disrespect. They were obviously not fighting with each other, not hitting each other. They, because they were in a such high level spiritually, for them to have maybe the most minor things that might not be disturbing to regular people, for them, because they were in a very high level, it actually caused anger, and it caused pain, and it caused agony to each other without even noticing. And this is what, but why now? We know Nachmanides says, Ramban said that the days of the Omer are like days between holidays. We have Passover here, Shavuot here. Usually the days between holidays are happy, are joyous. You have one holiday that you just left, another holiday that you're going towards. What would you ask for more? Right? That's a joyous period. But still, this period was done. And the Maharsha brings on the Talmud. They died between Passover and Shavuot to show it was a decree from above. As this time the weather is good and is considered to contribute to one's health. In other words, if they would die during the winter, during the summer, during some other time, you would think, okay, there was bad conditions, it was too cold, it was too hot, the sun was there. But here, this is the most perfect time of the year. This is spring. Usually weather is, it's nice actually outside. It's a little cold. It's kind of balancing, the heat that we were expecting. But anyway, the weather is the best in the year. That the springtime, in most cases, in most places, maybe South America, it's a little different nowadays, or everything in the southern hemisphere is the other way around. Although spring should be, it's not spring. What is it? Autumn now? Is the weather okay now? Yeah, it's still good weather. So Maharsha says they actually died in good weather to show you it wasn't nothing to do with their physical behavior or something. It was literally something spiritually. And the Rebbe explains something. He says like this: the students numbered 25,000, which is a very big number. This might cause an evil eye to be inflicted upon them. Of course, we know what the Talmud says about treating each other with disrespect, but it was the evil eye that made a relatively minor sin result in such a disproportionate tragedy. In addition, it is brought in the writings of the Ari that the days between Passover and Shavuot are the days of judgment. I skipped something. There was another quote that I missed. Where was it? Did I miss another quote? I wrote it.
Are you sure this wasn't a spiritual thing? Because diphtheria is really ugly.
Yeah. So basically, okay, I missed another quote. I had another quote. Anyway. Okay, the Rebbe brings a kind of a mystical reason. It was an evil eye, and he says, oh my gosh, she just fall asleep. Everybody falls asleep in my lectures, don't you?
What if she fell off the chair?
Yeah, so that's why she got it.
How do they know?
I don't know. Yeah, Hashem knows. There was another quote that I missed somewhere. The Rebbe says that basically we could say that it couldn't be that their behavior changed through 33 days. It all changed like that. They were perfect until then, and then all of a sudden everything changed and they died. So he explains that obviously it was a gradual process in which initially they thought they understand. The rabbi was talking, Rabbi Akiva was talking, and like everything in life, you hear one person talks and two people are hearing two different things. Sometimes two different things, sometimes two similar things, but most cases not two identical things, right? Specifically, if we talk about matters of discussions of Jewish rules and laws and different details, it's always very easy to get something, and you cannot help but put your own interpretation on everything. So they said, let's say, take an example, one student realized something, and then his friend said, did you hear what our rabbi said? He said so-and-so. And he says, no, I'm sorry, I think you're wrong. I think Rabbi said so-and-so, not just what you said. And he said, no, my friend, I think you're not right. And because I love you so much, I want you to make sure you got things right. So I could tell you that what you think is wrong and what I tell you is right. And obviously this went on to, a big thing. You don't know what you're saying. I don't know. No, they weren't really getting down to those levels of insult. It was their mere concern to each other that led them to be so rigid and so incapable of compromise. In other words, when you're a normal human being who thinks, I could think this way, you could think the other way, we could still be friends. But when I care so much about someone, I just won't let them err. I won't let them do a mistake. I won't let them have something in their mind that is wrong. So I'll do everything in my might to try and explain to them how wrong they are and how right I am. Now I took it to an extreme, obviously. That's with regular people. Since they were very righteous and pious, even the most insignificant gesture between themselves considered to be a real disrespect to each other. And that led them, and that with combination of what the Rebbe explains here, it was an evil eye. You see everything, the first tablets, the second tablet. You know the first tablets, God comes down on Mount Sinai. And he says, I am the Lord your God, thou shalt not have other gods. And everybody's excited. We celebrate it in the holiday of Shavuot, right? We're counting the Haomer towards. And, the world stopped and God came down. That's the first time and it's the last time that God came down into this world. A maidservant saw these miracles. Everybody saw all these things. And then what? A few days later, 40 days later, they do the golden calf. The tablets are broken into pieces. Everything is, we're back to point zero. The second tablets, we know Yom Kippur. Why Yom Kippur is such a special day? That was the day when the Torah was introduced to us again by Moses from God. This is a day of a second chance, a day of atonement, a day of repentance. On Yom Kippur, God had presented us. He accepted our repentance and presented us with the second Torah. Yom Kippur, we don't make such a big deal out of the giving of the Torah. In fact, the giving of the Torah that took place in Shavuot didn't last long. Only the second time around is what lasted. You know what's the difference? When you do something out in the open with big publicity, you got news cameras from all channels, all languages, everybody's putting their microphones, waiting for the live broadcast, everybody's talking about it 2 weeks before, 10 days before, 3 months after. Sometimes when those big events, an evil eye could ruin everything. Now, I'm not going to go into this whole evil eye thing because it requires a whole explanation on its own, and I'll be very frank with you, I'm also not very well learned in that field. I'll try to research it just because I'm interested in knowing about it. But yeah, I'm sorry. Well, my wife makes good cake.
We'll be back Saturday.
Can you go to timeline one more time? So we count the 49 days of the Haomer.
Right.
And after that we have a party.
After that we get the Torah from God.
Torah, okay? And so you're saying we get, on Yom Kippur we get a second Torah?
When the first tablet, remember, was broken.
Are you talking tablets or Torahs here?
Torah and tablets. The tablets represent the Torah.
Was it more of a abridged form of the Torah? Or was it more
No,
like
the second tablets brought about more novelties. The second tablets brought the oral Torah. For the first tablet, it was only written Torah. There was no oral Torah.
Okay.
But what happened is, because it was made in such publicity, an evil eye ruined everything. A big party, and then what do you end up with? Broken tablets. That's what you end up with. Second time, Yom Kippur, nobody knows, nobody's talking, everybody's praying in shul. Here are the second tablets. Guess what? It stays. It remains.
That was 3 months later.
That was, Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, Av Elul Tishrei. Right, correct.
So we had 3 months for God.
Yeah, 40 days,
So
40 days, 40 days, yeah.
Carved it himself, or he told Moses to do it?
Told Moses to do it. The first one were carved by God.
Yeah. And he said, okay, smarty pants, you do it yourself this time.
Yeah.
But his handwriting wasn't very good, though.
What?
His handwriting is not as good as that one.
Right. That was one thing that was missing. A few things that were missing. Anyway, so the evil eye is a concept. Rabbi Akiva came out of nowhere. He was illiterate. He was ignorant. He took things to serious matter, and he went and studied, and he invested, and he did everything in his might, and he became very famous. He became very famous. He didn't want to. He didn't paid newspapers to write his name and to write articles for him. He didn't buy ads, but he became very famous out of his own. But when somebody becomes famous and someone attracts a lot of attention, he attracted a lot of students. Sometimes they could also attract bad attention. And that bad attention manifests in what we call evil eye. And that evil eye, a combination of what we said, those minor gestures that were disrespectful to each other, in combination with the evil eye because of the publicity, had actually brought upon that decree that they will die in such a terrible manner. They will all die. And
So again, this kind of talks about more spirituality.
right, so we're talking now about that day, the days between Passover and Shavuot. Remember, we started with self-refinement, and we get to, actually it's not such a happy period. They all died. It's a period of judgment.
Yeah.
So here's what the Medrash says. It brings a story. There was once a king, and there was this big guy, a big shot, a minister. And the minister was accused of bribery or, other stuff that ministers normally do without getting caught, right? That's the difference between this guy and the other guys. He just got caught, right? So he got caught, and obviously the king was not very happy with him. So he thrown him into the prison. Back in the day, it wasn't an island on the Pacific. It was a pit, a hole in the ground. That was prison. Even an island in the ocean is better than those days' prison. So it puts him in the pit, and then he starts missing it. Turns out he was a very smart minister. The king liked him, like talking to him. So he decided he's going to go to have some chats with him. There's nothing for him to do. He's sitting there in the pit, obviously. So he came back and talked to him. He said, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And as he talked to him more and more, he actually began to like him more and more because he had all these smart things to say. And he said, okay. Forget the bribery, forget everything. Let's just pretend I'm going to get you out of this pit. But because you're so smart, I want you also to be a family member of mine. And I have a daughter, and she wants to get married. And I'm going to get you out of this pit, and we're going to arrange a wedding with my daughter. You'll be my son-in-law. And at that moment of when that ex-minister, now coming to be minister, was freed, he thought to himself, if the king had made a promise and fulfilled it to send me out, to take me out of this pit, he's going to fulfill the other part of that promise, obviously, to marry me off with his daughter. And when the Jews that was a parable brought in the Midrash, I kind of cut it a little bit, it's a little longer. When the Jews were in Egypt, they were captured. They were in the pit. They were in the hole in the ground. A black hole, a white hole, I could tell you they were in a hole. No way around. Egypt was the biggest empire. Not one servant could run away from Egypt. And guess what? God sends out Moses, and Moses comes out and said, let my people go. Pharaoh laughs him out of the room. He said, what are you talking about? And then blood, frogs, lice, wild animals, water splitting into two. Everybody's coming out. The Exodus, right? In being. Everybody sees that. So then the Jews remember, if God had fulfilled his promise to take us out of here, he's going to fulfill his promise to appoint us as the chosen nation and to give us the Torah. And they're starting to count the days spontaneously, not because they were commanded to do so. They're waiting for the second part of the promise. They're waiting for the promise to be fulfilled completely, which is receiving the Torah. So this is the first outlook of the Sefirat, the counting of the Haomer. We're counting the days from going out of Egypt to the Torah. So we're counting the days. That's why we're counting from the moment we were freed. Usually when you count towards something. But the Jews, in that case, they were counting from the moment they were freed because they knew after a period of time they're going to get the Torah. So they don't know exactly when and how, but they're counting the days from Egypt. They remember what happened to them in Egypt. They remember how were they just a little while ago, and that reminds us that, if we're no longer in Egypt, that means we're going to get the Torah. So they count on the backwards. And the Zohar brings it an analogy. It says like this: when Israel were in Egypt, they were considered like a woman who is counting the days after her menstruation in order to be pure again and reunite with her husband. So too God had said to them, from now on start the count towards purity. Hence it is said, and you shall count to you, meaning to be closer to the king and receive the Torah. It is as if preparing for a wedding. I don't know if you know that, in Jewish law, a woman that has, menstruates, and then that's a period of impurity, and then counting the days towards reuniting with her husband, counting the days towards living as a married couple. And that's exactly what the Zohar describes. The Jews were in a state of impurity. They were in a state of loneliness, of completely out of it. And here they are coming back to God, and coming back in a sense they didn't know. They didn't know it wasn't for them coming back. It was for God coming back, because He never forsake His nation. Even while in Egypt, even under Pharaoh, even through all the hardships, He remembered them and He listened to them, and He sent Moses to take them out. So too we say that God does not forsake His nation. Even now, it seems like 2019, everything is artificial intelligence. And we have Israel, we have America, we have this, we have that, the UN. Where's God in this story? He does not forsake us. He knows we need redemption. He knows He's going to get us out of it. I got to tell you, He's going to get us out of this place. Not that it's bad here that much, but redemption is much better than what you could expect. Even better than La Jolla, I could tell you. Redemption.
La Jolla is pretty good.
No. Redemption. So the Zohar explains, there's a parable from the previous Rebbe. Just read it in English a few days ago about the Kishke. You know what is Kishke? Deborah, you know what is Kishke?
Yeah.
Kishke. What is it? Kishke is the intestine of.
Kishka's an intestine?
Yeah.
We're allowed to eat
Derma. Yeah.
We're allowed to eat intestine?
Yes, it's derma. So the story with this guy who who was visited by the king, and he served the king with this authentic Jewish food called kishke, which is stuffed intestine of an animal. And the king liked it a lot, so much so that he ate all his plate and he ate everything that was left on the table. And he asked the Jew for the recipe. So the Jew said, no problem, I'll give you the recipe. He gave him the recipe, and the king orders one of his servants to take down the recipe and to prepare it to him in the palace. And he prepares it in the palace, and it tastes like garbage, and he can't eat it. And he sends a letter, a very bad letter to the Jew. You tricked me, you gave me a wrong recipe. In your home it tasted like this. In my palace it can't be. I got the best chef in the kingdom. So the Jew writes back, if you want, I could come by and teach him. I don't think it's such a complicated process, and the king said, well, very well, you should come and teach my cook. And he says, let me see how you do it. I was reading it anyways. So the cook takes the intestines and fill it up with all those different things that were by the recipe, and the king can't eat it. So the Jew says to the chef, he said, you're funny. He said, before you fill it up, you have to clean it. It's intestine of an animal. It contains all what intestine is supposed to contain. So you have to clean it first. First you clean it, then you stuff it. It doesn't say on the recipe, some people follow recipes completely, but it doesn't say on the recipe, but obviously self-understood, you need to clean it. And this is about refinement. Torah is introduced to us. God is saying, I'm coming now on Mount Sinai, I'm going to give you the Torah. But if the intestine is not clean, we cannot get the Torah. We cannot realize what the Torah. We have to clean ourselves as a preparation for the Torah. Preparing the vessel and then filling it up. So we have the duties of the heart that would come before the duties of the body. Duties of the body is what God tells us. You have to wear tefillin, you give tzedakah, you go to shul, you daven, you take this, you eat this, you shake a lulav, you light the menorah. All these things are duties of the body. Duties of the heart, are you ready for it? Are you going to understand what I'm going to explain to you? Are you willing? Are you receiving? Are you receptive? Yeah, that's a word. Sorry. Okay. Are you receptive towards what's going on? If it's all dirty, if you're not clean, if the vessel is not ready, how are you going to pour water into it? In other words, if you're not ready, what is it going to do? So this counting of the Haomer is the preparation for receiving the Torah, because you cannot follow the duties of the body without first following the duties of the heart. The days before Shavuot, the days before the counting of the Haomer, we prepare our vessel. Look at what Tractate Avot says. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Azariah, would say, if there's no Torah, there's no common decency. If there's no common decency, there's no Torah. Rabbi Yonah explains a person who should first conduct his behavior in the proper manner and then should learn Torah, as the Torah only lies in such a person. If a person acts like a jerk, I tell that to everyone all the time. It doesn't matter if they wear a black hat and they grow a white beard from here to the floor. If somebody acts like a jerk, they're a jerk. Okay? It doesn't change anything. You can learn all the books you want and swing as much as you want and go to all the synagogues you want. If you won't correct if you won't refine yourself, if you won't correct your negative behavior, if you don't work on your negativity, it won't just vanish. There's no book you could read and everything will just go out, will just appear, will just pretend like it wasn't there. You have to work hard. If you have bad habits, if you have some negativity within you, you have to work hard to get rid of it. Right? It doesn't help if So learning Torah. I was. No, I was just.
Continue.
Reminded of something.
Yeah, close the door.
You know what? I'll tell you what. Richard is the only guy I could look him in the eye and say something and he won't get insulted. Some other people would say, why is you say, why this, why that, Richard.
Some people learn Torah, they're a jerk. You say, unjerk yourself first and then I'll teach you Torah?
Absolutely. Not only that, it's not me saying first, it's all quotes, it's not my quote. But yes, you know what? You could learn Torah, you could gain what Torah has to offer. But would it change you? Would that mean that now you're becoming not a jerk because you learned Torah? No, that doesn't work like that. In other words, if you are aware, and if you're not aware, that's even a worse case. But if someone is aware of their negativity, of their bad things, of their dark secrets, so to speak, their personality disorders that are, and they're aware of that, and they just pretend like it's not there, and they learn Torah, they'll just be, a jerk who learns Torah, or a jerk who knows Torah, or a rabbi jerk, or a jerk rabbi.
A lot of laners, they call it laner, L-E-I-N-E-R, laner, a person who reads Torah. They're usually very nice. Sometimes someone's a real laner, they talk to that Torah, it's like they're so upbeat, they feel so very few people who have a very, very bad negative personality can walk into a Torah reading for some reason. It won't allow you to read. It's like, it won't allow you. You'll forget. You'll just want to get the trouble.
There is a lot of truth in what you say.
You're very upbeat.
There is a lot of truth in what you say.
Yeah.
Some parts of Torah, I'm not sure whether laning or not. Some parts of Torah will just not penetrate unless you're ready for them. Some parts of Torah, I mean, with all honesty, you could go to Columbia, NYU University, or any university in Israel, study Talmud, be a professor for Talmud, and remain a jerk. You could stay a jerk, and you'd be a professor for Talmud. You could learn the whole Talmud by heart and quote who said when and what and how and what the arguments are. But that would not make you less of a jerk than you were. And sometimes, on the contrary, some people who have that, leniency towards pride, arrogance, that would just increase that. Because before they were stupid arrogant, now they're smart arrogant, or whatever that, maybe sorry for saying it in a very Israeli way. As you notice, my English is very influenced by Israel, so I say things sometimes directly, which.
When I was teaching inside the prison, there was inmates who'd go to court, and they'd be studying Torah, they found God and all that, and the judges would say things like, you're more educated, you're more, learned, but you haven't changed. I wonder if somebody got this something.
I guess with inmates is a bit, it's a bit, right, it's called, what is it called? Correctional services, right? But the fact of the matter is there's very little correction that happens behind those walls, if at all. I mean, I've been to several prisons. I wasn't, thank God, accused of anything. I was volunteering in several places, but I can tell you, maybe the intention of the people who invented the correctional services was good, but practicality doesn't really correct. If thieves you get the new thieves who are coming from outside, and they teach them all the new techniques of how to get over the new locks. They sit and they get this whole conference happening. Oh, how'd you break that safe? How do you do this? What do you do happens if this case and that? It's actually a school for crime, unfortunately, in many cases. So I wouldn't take example for prisons that much. But let's talk a little bit about prison. Everybody's let's talk about ourselves. We all have our issues. We all have our problems. We all have our challenges. Let's not say the word problems. And if we just ignore it and just invest ourselves in study, it could help sometimes. Granted, sometimes it could help, sometimes. But in most cases, if we won't solve our problems, if we want to confront ourselves, if we want really do something to change our personality, it won't just vanish on its own. And people often has that mistake. They think, I'll just read this book, I'll practice this, and everything is going to work out. It doesn't work like that. You could see that with marriage falling apart. You could see that with companies, partners are separating from each other. They have this great idea, they put money in together, they think they're great, and then they get into this argument, this stupid fight, and then the company collapse, the family collapse, society collapse, party, we know that. It happens all the time. Their ego or their whatever you want to call it, if you don't work on it, it just doesn't vanish. It stays there. And unfortunately, sometimes it only becomes big of a problem if you don't cure it and if you don't take care of it. Now let's go back a little bit to our diagram of this the 7 attributes. Sheva Amidot, the 7 attributes. The first 3 are, I wrote 7, it's 10 basically, but the first 3, these are called the intellectual part. That's called the cognitive part. It's Chokhmah, wisdom, Binah, understanding, and Dat is knowledge. Now if you notice, Dat is actually called the key for all 6. It's surrounded by 6, and that is connection. It's knowledge, but it's also connection. Because in many cases we find somebody knowing something, but by knowing it, it's not enough. Unless you connect to it, it really becomes a part of who you are. So basically that is the key for all the 6. But I want to concentrate on that. I want to concentrate about those things. Okay, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, this is the right side and the left side, and that's the middle side. The middle, right? So right, left, middle, and that goes from here. Chesed to Gvura to Tiferet, Netzach, Hod Yesod, and Malchut. Okay, so Chesed is loving kindness. That's the first week. We are actually on the 3rd week of Sefirat Haomer, and I'll tell you soon what that means to us. Chesed, loving kindness, Gvura, justice and discipline, harmony, compassion is Tiferet. Netzach is endurance, Hod, humility, Yesod, bonding, or also foundation, Malchut is sovereignty or leadership. And let's look what it means in a practical sense. Let's look at a little bit, our emotional faculties. So we have 3 ways. Let's take a simple example, okay? Somebody goes to work. They go to work. So we have three ways of looking at it. The first way is embracing. Why do you go to work? I like the workplace. I like my boss. I like my colleagues. I like the place. I like, it's a good place. I enjoy going to work. Something. They say those people exist somewhere. Anyway, I love my job. Somebody goes. Another person, let's look at the other way, rejecting. Somebody says, I just don't want to stay poor. I have to bring money. I have to put bread on the table. I don't like my work. I hate my boss. I wish they all just dissolve into a black hole or something. But that's rejection. That's discipline. I discipline myself to go to work, although I don't really like it. And then there's the practical part, glory. Glory is Tiferet. It actually combines, as you saw, there's right, left, and middle. The middle actually combines both qualities. Takes from both from embracing and rejecting. That's practicality. The guy says, I have no emotions towards work. I don't know anything. Like it, don't like it. I just go to work because everybody goes to work because I have to, at the end of the day, I have to get something on to eat. I need to do. So in other words, it's not rejecting. It's not thinking there's a war here that's happening that I need to convince myself. It's just being practical. I don't have any sensitive. It's almost, what is it called? A Platonic, what is it? Yeah, Plato, right? Yeah. Anyway, no emotions to it. It's an intellectual decision, and it's just being practical. These are called kindness, discipline, and glory, which is the first three. The first week, for instance, we'll just take an example. The first week, it's called the week of loving kindness, the week of chesed. So you would say, what you have to choose between good and bad, which has always happened, and you have to say to yourself, what am I using my loving kindness for? Do I really love holiness, or do I love, good chocolate cake? I just took an example out of nowhere. It's just nothing to do with today or any. Do I love God? Do I love chocolate cake? Right? Or a very practical part. I love myself. I love another person. Well, the other person is just to serve me. When somebody says, I like something, I like chocolate, I like cake, you don't like this, you like yourself. You like yourself. Hence, you're treating yourself with that, right? It's not a matter of any connection between you and the thing. It could be someone, and unfortunately it also happens in relationships. You could say, I love someone. Why do you love them? Because they satisfy you, because you're happy to be next to them, because they're, you feel good in their environment. But that all comes back to me. That's not, I love you. That's not real love. Because that eventually it's all about my world and how you serve my interest in a very rough way, I say it. But at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. How do you help benefit me? And that's, so I don't like you, I like myself. I love myself. I'm crazy about myself, by the way, but that's different. I'm crazy about you as well. And you're crazy. And you're crazy. Yeah, you are. So in the first week of counting on Haomer, I just took an example. Loving kindness, we test ourselves. We check, what do we like? What do we love? And do we really have the right things in mind? Do we love God? Do we love chocolate cake? And knowing that loving chocolate cake means loving myself. So it all runs down to me again. Yes.
So the Haomer, we count, like for example, you count the Haomer this evening or this morning?
I haven't counted yet. I will.
Well, you better
daven. Yeah.
Okay.
You came in when I was about to daven. Yes. So.
Again, it's my fault. Again. Okay, but anyway, are you thinking about these things?
You need to. Do I do it? Sometimes I answer. I'm distracted.
Is
So
always going through your mind when you're doing
you need to. You see.
Prayer is very short.
Yeah. Well, you just have to. Prayers are short. Prayers are short because the sages tried to condense as much as they could within a text. First of all, prayer is very personal. I was answering Rick the other day on Shabbos. He asked me about meditation, and I explained to him prayer is meditation. So, the sages gave us the text, but what we could do with the text is all ourselves, is personality. And I told Rick that Jews, traditionally, Hasidic Jews, would pray 5-6 hours. Would you imagine? You can't have text for 5-6 hours. Most of the prayers without text is what you can make out of the text. So you have that text as a given in the prayer book. And your task is to take that into understanding and to, as we said, connect to it. And, the same, I didn't bring it up, but the second week, the week of discipline, we check ourselves, some things that are upsetting us. Why is it upsetting us? Because it says, because it's upsetting me as an individual, or it's a bad thing to have altogether? Am I really concerned? When I tell someone, I reprimand them, I tell them something bad, am I really concerned about their well-being? Or it's just because they're disturbing me and I'd rather them not to do it, so I do that. So we test ourselves. Discipline also has, loving kindness is about giving. Giving, yes, say yes all the time. Now saying yes all the time is not so good, because if my little Dory comes in and I cut tomatoes in the kitchen, he said, give me the knife. If I'm in loving kindness, sure, have the knife. But obviously she could hurt herself with the knife. So loving kindness is good, but it's also limited. You don't always say yes. But on the other hand, you don't always say no. Some things you need to say no to. Comes glory, which is the middle one, and connects them, which is mercy. Mercy is about, I know this person. So we have loving kindness is, I will give that person. I will give that person regardless of whether they deserve it or not. Here you go. Take. Discipline, justice, I'm not giving anyone anything. No. Comes mercy, and mercy says, okay, I'm going to give the one who's worthy. The one who's not worthy, I'll have mercy for him. And I'll give him, but not because I just say automatically yes. It's not a loving kindness. It's a combination. It's called mercy. Anyway, it's
That's a lot to take in.
There's a lot to I agree.
Studied that for years.
I agree. I'm sorry that sometimes when I look at these things and I think, should I touch upon it or should I not? Don't even start with it, because you never finish. But we know that it's always good to start, because you're all adults. Everybody has access to even internet, and you could research it and look. And if you need help, I'll be happy to.
Are we explaining a personality of somebody, or we explain what we strive for? You know what I'm saying? For example, we all want, obviously, I don't know about you, but I strive for loving kindness. Okay, so are you trying to say to me, are you trying to put labels on someone's personality? Are you trying to say, we shall strive for these kind of things?
I think
to acquire happiness, or
it is striving to something, but it's very individual. You see, not everyone has the same, faces the same issues. Right. For you to like someone or to smile to someone, and I'm talking about you now, is a very easy thing. Right. I know many people, even in our community, to smile to someone else is a challenge. It's, I'm having a bad day. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Why should I smile to you? Just mind your own business, For you to greet someone with a smile is an easy task. So you don't have to work on yourself that much over that. But maybe there's other fields where you do need your self-refinement.
Torah's telling us, or Talmud's telling us?
Yeah.
This thing is just strive for.
Yes. Yeah. So this could explain to us, okay, let's look a little bit about, here's the diagram. I found it in Hebrew. I did a bad job translating it to English. There's between I want, I think, I feel, I do, and result. Okay, the first one is I want, that's a crown. Crown is like a crown on someone's head. That's the wanting, that's the initial thought to start, to ignite a process, is what you want. Eventually, what do I want to happen, right? And then I think. You start with thinking. So you have the wisdom, the understanding, and the knowledge on both ends, right? Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge is called that. After the cognitive part comes the emotional part, and many people don't know that or don't realize it. I wouldn't use know, but realize it. Every emotion we have starts from our intellect. There's no such thing as the heart told me. My heart told me to do that. My heart, I have a feeling. When you have a feeling towards something or someone, it's because your brain is telling your heart how to respond. I see little kids, my kids, they're scared of dogs. My kids scared. Why are they scared of dogs? Because the mind, the brain, the intellect tells them the dog could bite you. So now this is a real emotion. The emotion of fear, the emotion of distance. I don't want to be near the dog. But that comes through a process. The process is that it started with the intellect, where I don't want to be bitten. Or the dog is a bad animal, it could bite me, for instance, in their world now. So the feeling is real, but the emotion is a result of the cognitive part of the. And then comes obviously the action part, right? The endurance, the majesty, foundation, the yesod. That's what I do. And then eventually the last one is called kingship malchut, which is the end result. And that's the actual what happens eventually in this world. And here's a little something about the counting. The 7 weeks, Ruben, that answers your question about the weeks. The 7 weeks which represent these emotional attributes further divide into 7 days, making up the 49 days of counting. Since a fully functional emotion is multidimensional, it includes within itself a blend of all 7 attributes. Thus, the counting of the first week, which being on the second night of Passover, begins on the second night of Passover, as well as consisting of the actual counting. Today is the day of, right, the day 1 of the Omer, would consist of the following structure and suggested meditation. Upon conclusion of the 49 days, we arrive at the 50th day, Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. After we have achieved all we can accomplish through our own initiative, traversing and refining every emotional corner of our psyche, we then receive a gift. Matan is a gift in Hebrew, from above. We receive that which we could not achieve with our own limited faculties. We receive the gift of true freedom, the ability to transcend our human limitations and touch the divine. That comes after we work for 49 days. Then we are entitled to that gift. In other words, you clean the vessel and then you wait for the abundance from above. So we do 7 included out of 7, that's 49, and the 50th come from above. Now, this we could explain all the questions we asked. We asked about this refinement, so we explained what is it that is needed, why we said we miss one day, and if you miss one day, the whole thing falls apart. Why is it so? Because it has to be built. 7 out of 7 times 7. So you need to have all these faculties refined. So if one day falls apart, that means that although you've managed to make a great progress over from last year or from the period before, but it's not the same thing as if, because we said there's always a second chance. Yeah, there is a second chance. But once missing one day, I'm not telling it to put anyone in despair if you missed a day in the counting of the Omer this year. I'm just explaining that there's one thing that's missing. And that's why we also don't say a blessing of Shechianu. Abaz explained the counting of the Omer is a preparation, and the blessing of Shechianu we recite it on Shavuot. Once the mitzvah is complete, this is a process that starts on Passover, ends of Shavuot. You don't say a blessing before the process ends. Basically, what we're doing now is just a preparation for it. Once we receive the Torah from God is when we say the blessing. Now, Josh, I remember you taking a picture of a slide that we had a few weeks ago, and I thought this slide is also appropriate now. With being practical, we say refining, we say thinking, discipline, kindness, all these attributes. What really means? It means we could really take, we brought this story several times about this young bride who was about to get married, and she went to a private audience and she told the Rebbe she wants to call off the wedding. And he says, what happened? And she said she feels like she's got, issues. She's got some personality issues. She's very egocentric and she's stubborn, and it's very hard to live with her. So she feels bad for the young husband to be. She doesn't want to hurt him, so she wants to call off the wedding. And the Rebbe explained to her that, try to volunteer. He said, you're going to have many kids. Remember I showed you that video? She had an infantile womb, and she had, 17 kids with an infantile womb? 15 kids, thank you. So he said you should volunteer in a kindergarten or go work with kids, because kids teach you how to be patient. Oh boy, they teach you how to be patient. And there's another lady who was trying to marry and couldn't, and she felt like she was full of herself, and she felt like she has a label of egocentric, of someone who cares only about themselves. What would you know, Jay? So the Rebbe proposed to her. She was studying in a seminary, and the Rebbe proposed to her that she will be the person in charge of cleaning all the dishes. And she said, always when you take something from the buffet, bring a central table a central plate to the table, and give it, and also try to collect the dishes, not as a punishment, but just to train yourself to be more into other people's needs, not only yourself. So you do it, granted, initially out of not wanting to do it, but once you start training yourself, you realize there's another person out there. There's someone else besides yourself that might need you, that might care for you, that you might care for them, and that would train you to get rid of and that's what I was talking about, refinement and working hard. These things don't vanish unless you address them, and that slide that you took a picture of, I decided to put it again. The self-refinement. That was last time the title was the road to go out of Exodus, but really it's being practical. You think, and this is very individual because everyone knows where their flaws are, and this is not something where someone should tell you about. Okay, if somebody really cares for you, if somebody really loves you, they could point at some of these things. But in most cases, it's a work that you do on your own. So if you want to change it, first of all, get practical. Focus on something specific. You won't be able to change everything. That's not going to work. Focus on one little thing that is disturbing to you and especially to other people around you. The second thing is take a resolution that is timely. Don't say I'm going to quit from now until I'll be 120, from now till ever. That doesn't work. You get into despair. The first time you miss, the second time you miss, the third time you're gone. This is out. So you have to take it in the next 3 weeks, in the next month, in the next 2 weeks, in the next 3 Fridays. You just do a timely thing. When you do it timely, that helps you achieve that goal. Guess what? If you fulfill that goal, move on to the next destination. And the most important thing, what Rabbi Akiva taught us, consistency. Consistency is the road to success. You have to be consistent. Take something small. Take it for a small period of time. But that's one thing you can't give up is consistency. You be consistent and you realize that this is the only way, the best way, but the only way to prepare ourselves to receiving the Torah from God Almighty. So, just to summarize, the counting of the Haomer on one hand is a period of sadness because we lost all these sages. That teaches us that no one is safe, no one is secure. No one says, oh, I'm going to study Torah and I'll do whatever I want. I'll be a member of God's exclusive VIP club. I study Torah day and night. I'm the greatest guy ever. No. It doesn't work like that. If you have issues with other people, if you have personality disorders, you have to address them. Study more Torah. It's not going to help. So it's a sad moment. It's a sad period. But what we could derive from it is that we could put stress on self-refinement, on what we need to do, what we need to achieve, and using these practical tools, we could also achieve it, and we can make it work in a way that would please not only ourselves, but even more so the people around us. Because when you make a real change in your life, trust me, you don't have to tell it to anyone, but everyone would notice. Everyone would realize, and I've seen that with people I know who really took to their hearts and to their minds and to their actions of changing things. You could see they become much more easy to go, easy to get around with, easy. You're happy to be next to someone who knows about their issues and care about them and does something to address them and to refine themselves. Any questions?
Yeah, the evil eye, can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I know you thought. Evil eye. Okay, it's a kind of a mystical thing. And
you don't seem that expert on there.
no, I honestly, I'm very honest. When I don't know, I say I don't know. I'm not going to invent an answer just because I like to address that. It's a mystical piece. And it's not only about me not knowing. There's very little known altogether about it. Is it real? Does it exist? How does it apply? Could you apply it on someone if you really don't like him? Could someone apply it on you? All these kind of questions you probably are looking for an answer for. I don't have the answer for it. I don't know who has the answer for it as well. But I could tell you that modesty is one of the things that could help everyone be absolved of evil eye. In other words, keep things to, the regular manner. Don't be arrogant. Don't brag over things. You're building a new synagogue. Don't tell the whole world you're building it. Get the keys on. Be in the seat. And then you can tell everybody that it's going on. Okay, legal. It becomes legal. You'll stop doing it. What's the sense, right? Anyway. Okay. What? Unkelos. Yeah, it's a interpretation of the Torah. It's a translation to Aramaic of the Torah. Okay. As usual, God willing. Okay, there we are. Any questions?
Are we